Right now, construction is going on at miles and miles of highway in our state, not to necessarily protect drivers, but to make life more pleasant and quieter for all the people who live right next to an interstate. There seems to be a construction boom in Connecticut at the side of a highway near you. They are sound barriers currently going up at several locations in our state, like here in West Hartford. And there have been many others that have been standing for years.
We have about 150 sound barriers here in Connecticut right now that are existing. Most of those are along I-91, I-84, I-95.
Connecticut's highway system started going up in the 1950s as part of President Dwight Eisenhower's massive national interstate highway system. As our state grew, the housing stock grew. And by the 1980s, some towns had people living near the interstates, and they complained about the noise of trucks, cars, and sirens. The solution? Build giant walls to block out the sound. Let's talk about these sound barriers and noise walls. How long have they been around, and do they really work?
Well, thanks for that question, Dennis. Most of our sound barriers were constructed back in the 1980s, 1990s. For the most part, most of those were the timber noise walls or the wood noise walls that you see. And they can be quite effective. If you have the right length and the right height, sound barriers can actually decrease noise by about 10 decibels, which decibels are on a logarithmic scale.
It's not a perfect system. The noise can travel over the barriers and impact homes that are a few houses away from the highway. And it's not cheap to do this. Timber was less expensive but doesn't last as long, so the state is switching to concrete barriers. The cost to build 1 mile of them, nearly $5 million. There are some who will say that the millions of dollars spent on these walls is a waste of money. What's your take on that? What's your response?
That certainly depends what lens you're looking through. So if you're in one of these communities that feel that you're impacted by noise, I think you would feel that the expense is worthwhile. They can be quite expensive.
The demand for sound barriers appears to be increasing.
We certainly have seen an increase in complaints since the pandemic. And we think that there's a lot of reasons for that. Many people are working from home, teleworking, that never were before. So they're home during the day when perhaps they weren't previously.
And they want quiet.
And now they want quiet. They want to concentrate at work.
And there are others who say, why buy a house near a highway? Right? Why should the state pay for walls when you choose to live next to a highway?
People have moved in around those, sometimes for the convenience of being able to hop on the highway really quickly, or perhaps get to the train station or to the bus station quickly. So it all depends on the age of the neighborhood. So some people, have been impacted by that and didn't have a choice in the matter.
Do you see a day when all the highways in Connecticut will have walls everywhere?
I don't think so, no, right? Because they're not called for everywhere. You wouldn't want to have that kind of intrusion, on the landscape everywhere unless they're really warranted. So when we do those studies and we look at our projects, we do in-depth models to look at if a noise wall will actually be effective. Again, they have limitations. If they are not long enough or can't be high enough to block noise, and if they don't meet a reasonableness factor, sometimes they're not feasible.
And some highways will never get these barriers, even though taxpayers whose yards back up to highways may want them. What about the Wilbur Cross and Merritt parkways? We don't see them there. And some people who live along those say that they'd like to have them.
And that's actually for a very good reason. The Merritt Parkway guidelines actually do not allow for sound barriers or noise walls along the Merritt Parkway because of the aesthetics and the historic nature of that stretch of roadway.
It has that old town atmosphere, but no lack of new development. Our tour of the state takes us to Ellington after the break.